Well, hello, hello. I am Matthew Orr, and I'm back again for another Other Ink Thursday. And this time I'm joined by a pair of creatives in the TTRPG industry who are making things, products, but not role-playing games. Janet and Mark of Dirty Woods. Welcome to the interview.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks. Great to be here.
I was thinking before I started the interview, I'm like, how do I describe what you all do? And it's like, I would not be surprised if I found anything over in your all's booth. Like you do uh, like nameplates and like dice towers and like boxes to like magnetic click boxes that hold dice in them. If I saw like it's a poodle skirt, but it's not a poodle, it's a cockatrice instead, like that would not surprise me either. Like you all have like belts, belt buckle, like you just and part of it is like, look, you got to sell to the nerds, right? Like the people are going to buy this stuff, but like how would you describe what you do? Because I think I've described it already badly. So tell me what you all would when I come to the when someone comes to the booth at a Gen Con or it's to the Dirty Woods booth, what do they see? What are you selling?
For stuff, and I can talk about the topic stuff.
Uh, sure. Yeah.
You might have some stuff off camera.
All the boxes and stuff, like basically, and this is a prime example, like tabletop solutions almost.
Yeah,
And I started with all the boxes and the towers and stuff, and it was like, let's find ways to make what I want, make it better. And I have these dice, and I want to hold them safely, but I don't like what's out there. So I redesigned, and then that led me down a path for all these different designs. And then, a couple years go by, and next thing you know, it's like I've got, friends that are doing their own things, but, I want to make special things for their special things. So, in the last couple years, it's been like, oh, I want to, design the box for Fireborg. I want to design a box for, Dungeon Crawl Classics. I want to design
yeah.
a box for mazes, doing special projects and stuff. So it's basically just creative dice and gaming solutions, everything.
Yeah.
I
What
mean,
you just
we're
for the viewers, if I can see it says Pirate Borg on the box that you're showing up there. So it's you're using the logo and it looks it's official, it's like official, it's semi-official. I mean, that's one of the questions that I had to ask you. It's like how official are these things and like building those relationships is kind of one of the other questions. But that's a little bit further down the line here. What were you going to say, Janet?
it's so I mean, we are gamers and we play lots of different games, and we look at layouts of our boxes to fit different types of players. Like we have a mini pocket in some of our boxes. We have a pencil holder because some people always forget their pencil and get yelled at. And now it's in my metal dice, chessex, your acrylics. We have oversized because a lot of independent dice makers are making oversized like D20s and D6s.
All of the
So
resonators.
yeah, so we like to our creative process to let you guys in on the secret is we like to have a shot or two of rum and play what if, where we talk about different layouts and games that we've played or feedback we've gotten. What if we moved this mini pocket over here and we added some hexes so that way you could, also, so like our mini pocket holds a 7-piece set of acrylic die. So if you don't play with miniatures, you can pull the foam out, you can put your 7-piece set of acrylic die there and your metal or semi-precious set and the hexes. Like we are constantly trying to evolve what I can chuck in my backpack and will survive my backpack at Gen Con and any
Hmm.
table I go to, I've got appropriate gaming space and just, making it fun to have too. Like the resin is the part that I do, and we have a lot of fun. Like I get to throw different colors together, try
Yeah,
different
yeah.
graphics. We hire different artists to make graphics for us because neither of us can really draw. So part of working with other creatives is, hey, I want a graphic that's like, well, I've got actually an artist right now working on an evil gnome graphic for me. I'm like, I want an evil lawn gnome on a tower. I
It's
think it could be fun, right?
yeah.
Um, so, and then the other thing that you'll see in our booth at times is fabric pieces. So what you were talking about, like there's purses, bags, dice bags, um, some 3D printed stuff. So we have a friend who's also a maker who does all the fabric. She's with Pacific Midwest designs,
Creation.
creations. Don't tell her I missaid it. She knows where I live. But what we
Yeah,
found
this is just
weird,
between you and us.
right? Exactly, in the internet, and no one ever sees. No, I'm kidding. Um,
Just edit that out. It's cool.
yeah, but as we were establishing kind of our line of product, and she was starting to take on sewing and finding just some fantastic, like nerdy fabrics. We like the idea of the two textures in the booth and just having something available for everyone. And then she and her husband also dabble in 3D printing. So if you've seen some of those pieces, and she does Funko lamps as well. So it becomes kind of a nerd bazaar at the
Yeah,
booth. We do all the woodworking, the signs, and then she does all the fabric pieces. So it's a pretty
yeah,
cool partnership. We get to help each other, support the booth. We do shows independently of each other sometimes. But what you've seen, like especially at Origins, is all of our merch together just because it's fun. Like it's
right,
colorful.
right. And you, I mean, there's those big shows are like, yeah, it's almost hard to target, right? Unless you could fill the entire booth with like one thing, you kind of, it's almost better to do there's something for everyone, right? There's 30,000 people here, but and all of you could buy something, whether you're playing miniatures or tabletop, board game, or whatever, whether you just like, a quote from Tolkien on your cutting board, like I think you had one of those, or it wasn't the quote, it was well, you've done the all who wander, not all who wander
We
are
have,
lost, right? That's on
we
a
have,
wall plate or a cutting board or something that I've seen in your booth
yes.
before.
We also have I like terrible puns. So we have sock boards for laundry rooms that you can like clip mismatched socks. And one of the Tolkien ones says, "Not all socks who wander are lost." So
Mm.
there's my terrible joke for this
No,
interview.
that's great. That's great. All right. So I think we've got a sense of it. I want to back up a little bit. You said you're gamers, so like what are some of your favorite games? What kind of are the games that are like, oh no, now I've played this now. Now I guess I'm a nerd. Like what is that like origin story
You want
for
to take it
either
like way back?
Yeah, I was gonna say, how far back do we want to go?
far back as you want to go, like I mean, if you played Sorry and that like bonk bonk sorry, like if that's really what you're like, I got to get this juice into my life, I got to have more of this, like if that's really how it started at age 5, like tell me that, but
I
like
I was actually 11. Um, this was 1989.
all right.
It's been a little while, and so I had a few friends and playing Dungeons and Dragons, and they had this box set. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then, strangely enough, my parents had the Holmes box set in the top of like in the board game closet. It had always been there. And now I understood it. It's like, oh, I know what this is. Uh, so you know, fast forward, several years of playing off and on with friends from sixth grade through junior high, and then high school was a pivotal time. We got pretty heavy into second edition. I played with a lot of different people, but two of my best friends who I'm still friends with to this day. We played for years and years, and then you know I was pretty dead set on playing Dungeons and Dragons forever. And let's see, third edition came out, OGL, and all this other stuff happened, and there was all these other things coming out, and I was like, that's awesome. People are making cool stuff. But I was still playing D&D, and then fast forward again to it wasn't until we started doing this that I really started exploring
Hmm.
independent stuff and like not necessarily getting away from Dungeons and Dragons, but like playing, just trying everything. And everything's been great, from TTRPGs to card games to board games and stuff. Like we have so much stuff, and it's fun exploring this with Janet and with kids and meeting new friends, especially going to conventions and talking to the people that created the games and the excitement around it. So it's been a 35-year journey at this point of games of all kinds for me. So
Yeah.
Who knows where I got my start? It all started with Uno. That
Uno.
yeah, Uno. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in Indiana, where if you've ever been to Indiana, apparently the only game people play here is euchre. which was
I have heard that about it.
not my jam, but I could have an Uno deck anywhere where I was hanging out with people, and you throw that out, and it's take that. Everybody's laughing, having a good time. And then a little bit of Vampire the Masquerade, more LARP, like in
A
the
natural transition, one to the
right,
other.
right. I mean, straight, and a little over 20, well, like 23 years ago, we both played MMOs. So Mark lived on the other side of the country. We gamed together for 2 years on a game called Dark Age of Camelot. And then I was going to move to Southern California, and he was like, "You can't move to SoCal." No offense to anyone from SoCal listening to this, but he's from NorCal. So he's like, "You can't move to SoCal until you've seen NorCal." So I bought a plane ticket to come out for 9 days, and a Troll and a Kobold moved in together shortly after, and have been together for 20 years. And then that started more of my tabletop journey.
Sure. Uh, just I love to hear people like how they, the little moments, right? Like, yeah. Do you, is it a, so I don't know that MMO. Is it like it sounds like it's a heroic fantasy sort of
It
thing
was
in the age
the
when World of Warcraft was real big, or is it,
Yeah, it predates WoW. So after EverQuest, and it's 3 realms. We were in Midgard. You were playing humans, trolls, kobolds, dwarves, and you're defending your realm. So it had great PvP because you'd have 3 realms going to war, or two war. It was just it was such a great online community. Like, we're still friends with people that
hmm,
we met through Dark Age
yeah,
20 years ago, and I think that experience is the same experience that we found in the gaming community going to conventions. Like, there's just, I don't know, man, good people want to play good games, right?
sure,
So, like,
sure.
we found that with Dark Age, and we still find that today.
Yeah. So the troll and kobold thing that you said, that's your factions when you were playing that game. That's
Our races.
still,
I was a kobold and he was a troll. And
yeah.
somehow it worked, despite what
Yeah.
our parents said.
I
So,
found her and I kept her. So
I I was gonna ask which is which, but I that was what my guess would have been if I had to guess which which of you has troll energy and which of you has cobalt energy. It'd be, yeah, Mark is the troll and Janet is the cobalt. Uh okay. This is great. I love this. So it's but like okay, so you're playing games, you're starting this thing, and then but at some point you have to decide like uh, but I could make dice towers. Like, there's like a decision there that like, okay, we're in the games industry, we're having fun, we're doing this together, but then like, did you accidentally kind of fall into it, or was it sort of like,
kind
uh,
of. So I bought that was it 2017 or so. I was like, I bought my first metal set of dice. I'm like, I've been playing for a long time. Let's like start getting some nicer stuff. So got this set of dice, and then it's like I got nice dice. I got to get a nice box for them, right? And I was not 100% in on all the available options at the time. Um, Nothing bad about anybody who was making dice boxes at the time, because they all make great stuff. But I had something very specific in my head, and then I kind of within the following year or so I was like, I bet I can make one. And so since I had spent a year working as an apprentice machinist, I started looking at CNC and all that stuff, and was like, oh, I could just design my own stuff, and it just slowly evolved into,
started with, how big was the first CNC, the hobby one?
oh, it was like 2 feet by 2 feet. Was the whole footprint. I could only do like 10-inch by 10-inch piece of wood at the time. So
yeah,
So
that's enough to make like dice box, right?
right.
then it was, well, I'm just going to upgrade to this other one, because then, I could do a little bit more. And people are asking if I would make them one, and so maybe I'll sell a couple. He launched an Etsy, just kind of see what would happen, which then was a slightly bigger one, which then led to the CNC. That means we'll never park in our garage ever again, because it's a much bigger one. But it's cool to see the progression of
Yeah. Eh,
Like when we look back on our first boxes that he made, we didn't do resin at that point. They were
Not the greatest designs, and I'm kind of surprised that people bought them, but I mean, they were functional and they did the job.
yeah.
Uh, yes, the evolution of where we started to where we're at, it's crazy.
Well, that's, I mean, that's, if you keep doing it, like that's how it happens. Like, I think, the same for me, right? I mean, I look at my first game that I designed, that Brandon and I worked on together, and it's like we wouldn't do it like this at all now. But that's because that was 2015, 2016, and we're different people now, and we've learned a lot, right? So yeah, of course. Um, all right, so you've mentioned going to the cons, meeting the con family, and that's definitely something that I want to talk about because, like, we've seen each other at a lot of cons. Like, we're all in the same con family, like hanging out with the same people. Like, I saw pictures of you with, Dieter and Jonathan from, Lurking Fears, like in your house playing games. Like you guys are all there's this friend group that extends beyond the actual like weekend. See, 3 weekends a year we get to hang out, whatever. But like, so I want to talk about that, but I also want to talk about like, what is I think it relates together, right? You mentioned you showed the Pirate Borg box, like what is that just the next logical step from like what you've got a big seeds, you've got a big computer machine now, or you're making dice boxes, you're putting the resin in, like let's get the real logos. Let's like, well, they're right over there, let's just walk down 3 aisles and ask them if we can put their logo on the box, like, or is it, I mean, is it a business thing, like is it a licensing thing, like how does that actually work?
both.
But
It's
also like where's the inspiration for it, I guess.
it just depends on the actual depends on the vendor, Fireboard um versus, Dungeon Crawl Classics, like their business models, work certain ways, and it's with Pirate Board, those guys are awesome, and I was just like, I need to make some cool boxes and I want to do some cool stuff, and they're like, yeah, yeah, let's do it, and it's just like, I put them up on our website, and they have some at their booth sometimes, and we kind of have an informal, agreement, kind of a handshake agreement, licensing type of deal. Um, and then with like Goodman Games, it's the layout is my own, but I put the DCC.
One of them. I don't know if I can tilt it here.
This one didn't have it.
With the funky dice.
Oh, you got to get all their D7s and their D30s and stuff like that in there.
So I made the layout, but then I talked to um, Joseph Goodman, and he was like, "Hey, can you put our logo on the box and then make us some?" So I wholesale them directly to him, or as a company then. Um, so the ones with the DCC logo or DCC RPG logo, you can only get through them.
Mm,
But we still make other stuff, and you can fit this lid on that DCC base and
yeah.
stuff. And then we're working on let's see, what was it? Okay, so Black Oak with their Kitty Clacks Kickstarter, we're added some cool Kitty Clack stuff. So it's a custom design for the resin pour. And then we just started working with Ninth Level Games. We're kind of
For
coming up with a
mazes.
mazes box because they have the bigger dice. And then we're doing some cool stuff with doing the resolver on the velvet tray. So like it varies from vendor to vendor. Like, and some of that is like we played the games, and then or talk to them, and we get this excitement that just goes back and forth. Like they're excited about their game, we're excited about playing their game,
Yeah.
and my brain starts working. And like, I can do this. Oh, I can do this. What about this? And then we kind of bounce things off of each other and bounce things off of them. So we make prototypes, and then we all just kind of like this excitement just kind of grows and grows, and it just
Yeah.
becomes a creative ball of craziness that ends up turning into a cool product.
Yeah.
So
It's the product, is the people too. Like, you mentioned Con Family, Limithron, fantastic people. Like, I mean, don't tell Tyler I said that about him, but like, no, I'm kidding. Tyler and Luke, or Luke and Tyler, are awesome people, but
Yeah.
it's like Their game is great. We had so much fun playing it. Our interactions with them at the conventions, like there's good people, and so you want to work around those types of people. Like DCC is one of my favorite TTRPGs. So I had actually been asking for like a year. I'm like, hey, we should make a DCC box. And Mark was like, I don't know if there's much of a market for that. And we were at a convention and a gentleman came up and he was like, do you make any of these for DCC? And I'm like, talk to that guy right there and bully him so I get my DCC box. But the community in DCC is amazing. Like I tell people all the time, the DCC Facebook group is probably one of the balms for the soul on social media. Like it's just supporting people, it's nerd environment. When a noob asks a question, no one's like, how do you not know that? Like they're like, oh,
Mm,
well, I did this. And so I find that a lot of the projects we do, it's because we're so motivated by that's an amazing product they put out. And then also the people who are behind it are the people that we want to interact with, like that
yeah.
have, they bring something amazing to the community.
Yeah. So many of those people, I mean, these are the same people that I've interacted with, right? Um, Heather and Chris from ninth level, and you're talking about like, I know they have the big chunky dice for the polymorph system, so it's like I can imagine you and Chris having that conversation, like, oh, what if I did this? And it's like, oh, but our dice are a little bit bigger, but you could just make it a little bit bigger, and like that I could very easily see that, right? Because I know some of these same people, and like, yeah, I could you're talking about like uh you know Luke at Limithron, like his little you've got the DCC or the Pirate Borg logo, but like his any one of his little undead Caribbean pirate type guys would look great on the cover of a box, and you could go to him and be like, hey, we want to have like, oh yeah, there's
Well,
their
but
embossed skull inside the velvet.
yeah,
I mean, to go back to the technology part of it a little bit, is it as I imagine that it's as easy as this, right? So like you would be like, hey Luke, we want to do a special run, give us like a new sketch of a pirate, and we'll put that on the cover of the box, and then like he'll draw the sketch and send it to you, and then you could just take that and put that on the box. And obviously, I mean, is it tell the drill or whatever, like make this shape, right? I mean, is it that easy to do, or I'm sure there's a little bit of detail about positioning and all that kind of stuff, but in
yeah,
theory, what I'm saying is not that hard, right?
it's not extremely difficult. Part of the hardest part is understanding how the machines work, but the programs are not hard. Um, and I have this tendency to just like try stuff.
Hmm.
Like, so I've got like a whole stack of failed projects. You know, so like, oh, let's try and do this, and it worked or it didn't work, or you get that first failed one, you're like, oh, it almost works, so let me change it. But it's not extremely difficult. It's very like the learning curve is steep at first, but levels out really quickly. Um, I think the biggest thing for learning that stuff was that I spent a year as a machinist apprentice. So I already had the knowledge of, you know, three axis and, lasers and
Right.
end mills and all this stuff. And so it's not that difficult. In all honesty, our
Yeah,
harder part is getting it right and then getting cool resin pours, which is,
I do spend some time. So resin is a fickle mistress, and sometimes with new graphics. So here's a good example. We did a Kickstarter for the DCC box, which is almost we're about the very end of fulfillment of that. Um, Joe Averino, who is a fantastic artist, did a graphic for us, and I absolutely love it. My first two test pours with resin in it, I hated the way it came out. Like it just the way the graphic is designed and where resin needs to kind of move through and layering colors. And I was making sure it was blacklight reactive. Um, I think we ended up altogether doing 10 different test pours of it before I felt like we were ready to put it in production for, for what people would receive. So there are definitely like standard pours that we do that I could probably blindfold myself and, from the first pour, I'm like, ooh, I like that. Let's go. And then there are other things that we do that are very specific that for the colors to be right and we want that resin to really be like a standout on the product. So
Mhm.
there's definitely some test force there.
Is that like just about the thickness of the line between like you're making essentially carving a reservoir and then you're pouring the resin in, so then like it kind of has to flow across it, or can you start on two ends and it meets in the middle, or like that's the kind of thing you're talking about when
Exactly.
you're trying to like
Yeah.
get it right?
Am I using the heat gun on it? Am I using a toothpick? Are we dragging my very technical tools? Am I dragging a popsicle stick across it? And I will tell you guys, like, if you ever come to the booth, we don't believe in trade secrets. So if you're like, how did you make this happen? Like,
Mm,
I will bore you in great detail of exactly how I got the resin to do that.
yeah.
Um, but I think that was what was a big learning curve for both of us, just figuring out the resin portion. And then we started where we didn't overfill the resin, so it was kind of inlaid into it. So then we started overfilling and sanding and planing, so that way it was smooth one texture across the top. Like there were definitely changes to that, and we've looked at putting resin in different parts of the box for some of the projects. So, but yeah, I mean, it's really just trial and error, man. It's like when we play What If, and you have to like not be afraid to say, all right, let's
Yeah.
try this. And we've done that with prototypes. So like with ninth level, before we um I always feel like when like a lot of people are tactile, like I am, like I want it in my greedy little hands before I decide
Uh-huh.
anything, which is why at conventions I spend more than I ever do on a website, like when I can actually touch the books and take them home with me.
Right,
But
right.
we
I
made
think a
the
lot of people in the industry are that way, which is a lot of the fans are that way. They want to touch it, they want to see it, they want to
yeah.
have it.
So we went out on a limb and we made three different prototypes for the mazes box to take to them to show them, hey, here's a thought we
Mm,
had, you know, and just like we gave them the boxes. One, it was just fun to like give things to our friends at a convention. But two, to let them see it, and then they gave us some great feedback, and so did Patrick. And then the next convention, brought them an updated version of it and took that feedback. So it's like let's just try it, see what happens. Yeah.
yeah. I think there's like a I, I appreciate that there's like a hustle aspect to it, like what you're just talking about. You're like, hey, I made this. Do you like it? We could do a deal and you could make I could make 60 more if you like it, but like here, I just made you one, take it. And there's I mean, it's business, right? Oh, we're doing dirty stuff, but like that's like a real business move, right? To kind of like you said, like go out on a limb and give away these prototypes that are sort of like, like you want to drum up the business. You're trying to please a customer, but you're not really at that level yet. You're still kind of in that nebulous. You're more than acquaintances, not quite business partners. Friends is in there somewhere. That's such a different way to uh, I don't know. I think it comes from the industry being sort of like that. You got to be in that room for like 8 hours a day for like 4 days in a row, and like there's a closeness to that sort of like we're all in this together kind of thing for all the different booths. That I think it generates that sort of like I'm feeling generous or whatever. I want to talk to you, or let's do something together. I don't know. I'm putting stuff on you. Like you tell me, is that kind of how it is? Do you think of am I can see it as happening that way, but how is that how it really
Yeah,
happens?
it definitely goes both ways. We've had people approach us and say, hey, we would like you to make a product for us. And then we've had the flip side, like with Nine Level, we're like, man, just what you're making is so cool. Like it it is business in a sense, right? Like
Yeah.
if we could all just game all day and that just paid our bills, that would be fantastic. Let's live in that world 100%. Yeah. But we are all there in a business sense. And if what we can show up with can bring business for both of us, I think that it never hurts to do that. So
Yeah.
it's how I feel like this industry. Not that I've done business in any other industry really, but like if there's so much we're in this together. Like, yes, you can go at it alone, and I can, we could just make our stuff and call it a day. But we all benefit from bouncing that creative energy off each other, and it's a business thing, but it's more of a creative thing. We're all just creatives trying to
Mm,
make the world. We share our creativity and collaborate creativity and make cooler things and make better things and put it out there and make enough to just keep the lights on. eat dinner and stuff. But
Yeah,
you
yeah,
I
know,
mean,
that's
that's like the last Kickstarter that Ninth Level did and Vestgrim, Ryan's
oh yeah, that was their games are nothing alike, but they had
at
this
all.
collaboration because they're friends and stuff. So it was like back both Kickstarters, you get an awesome patch, which we back both.
Yeah. So like that's cool, where you see other like they're both tabletop games, right?
Mhm.
But that collaboration between the two of them say, hey, we're both launching Kickstarters. Could we help pull from both of our fan bases and benefit? And those who back both like get a reward for it. I mean, I think that's a cool part of the industry is that everyone, in our experience, everyone is always trying to help everyone else succeed as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're in a slice of the industry that's it's not truly in competition with each other. Like maybe Watsy and Upper Deck are in competition with each other, but they're at the other end of the hall. Like
Yeah.
we're not at that level.
They have like investors and boards and stuff. I've got
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
dirty garage with a machine in it. So
Yeah, yeah. You see my elaborate office back here. It's like
they,
this is the yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a reason to compete with each other. It is sort of like let's collaborate instead. I think that's great. Um, so I don't know. Like, you talked about a website, you've talked about running Kickstarters, you've talked about like going to cons. Like, do you have like a con strategy that is like, because like what Wet Ink has done is we kind of like we go to some really big cons and that's kind of our main cons, and then we don't really go to a lot of other cons because those are we make a big effort at a big cons, and we go to some smaller cons as well, but not a lot. I know other people that are like, I mean, they'll be selling their little stuffed animals, crocheted things at like every weekend they're somewhere, selling those things. So like of those two sort of things, what's your con strategy kind of for that? Because it sounds like I mean, you're doing all right if you're like, running Kickstarters and making things for other people's Kickstarters and licensing stuff out, but selling wholesale to other people. Like you're kind of like you're not at that sounds like you're not at that stage where you're like we have to go every weekend and sell like 7 of these, or to get our booth fee back, and hopefully that's enough, like you said, to get dinner this week, and then we'll make 3 more. That like you're not you're having a little bit, it sounds like you're doing a little bit, you're at a stage that you're not quite at that point, right?
yeah, I mean we don't have to go to every con, but I think the biggest part of that is we have to spend so much time making every single box. We
Mm,
can only go to so many cons. And then there's this balance between, all right, I want to sell a bunch of stuff, but I got another con to go to, so I need to have some inventory to go to that con.
yeah.
So it's a balancing game. Like we're like 2 to 3 medium to bigger conventions a year. Plus, we go to Gen Con. We don't have a booth at Gen Con, but we're doing stuff there, working and other Goodman Games has our boxes there and stuff. So it's really the more I look at it, the more it's like I don't think there's one script strategy. Like everybody has to do their own thing based off their business. I
Sure.
see a lot of people that do every weekend, and that's great. If that's what they want to do, and that's how they're making their money, then go for it. But man, I don't. Well, one would be a lot of energy to do that, and then
We're always chasing inventory. That's our biggest thing.
Yeah,
We have to be selective on the conventions. We're
yeah.
planning next year to hopefully expand our shop space so we could up production. But we also like, we like to game on Friday nights with our friends and like have a
Sure,
social
sure,
life. So
sure. I it's so I mean it's one of the reasons why I want to talk to people who I don't like talk to, because like for me I'm like, we send an order to a factory and they make 4,000 copies of a thing, and then it sits in, the production side of what we do as a publisher is like it's not at all about that. Like we never see those books because they go to a warehouse, and then they go from the warehouse to the fulfillment center, and then they go out to the people, or they come to, like we'll see a pallet. Some of these products, like the first time I see them is when they show up at our booth to sell them at the convention, because they came from the production to the warehouse and then to the convention. But like, yeah, if you've got to make them all yourselves and pour the resin, it is a much more, the labor is much more on that side of it. Like you've got to do all the things, and like what is the throughput, like you said, of your garage office. Like that's such a different, yeah, like inventory is such a different thing than or I don't think about it in the same way, right? So that's fascinating. I mean, obvious once you say it, then I'm like, oh yeah, of course. So
Yeah, it turns out that we actually have to sleep sometimes, so we have to take that into
right.
account. But I think there's people in publishing too who, like John Sideriatis had a Kickstarter for his Astro Mythos collection, so he put out a 5e book for it, and it came with a miniature, it came with a pen. There were a lot of different options. All of that came to his house. Like he packed everything for his
Yeah.
Kickstarter. So at one point, yeah, he looked like a hoarder, like it was just box and box and
Yeah,
box. And
yeah,
we
yeah.
do, I think ninth level, most of theirs comes to their house. Like it is different because then you also have to what kind of square footage. And I can't remember. This is gonna sound terrible. When we went to the con in Fort Wayne, we have their books. They do 5e. Anyways, everything comes to their house, but he has to determine how much product they can publish at a time because he is the warehouse. And so so everybody's like at these different
Yeah,
levels
yeah, yeah.
versus like where you guys were at, or if you look at like Free League, like everything's going to a distro and then it's getting sent out. Like it is kind of a different journey for
Right.
everyone on what their production looks like.
Yeah. It is. It is. Yeah, I mean, it's more that crafting sort of thing as opposed to like I mean, the artistry is in like a different sort of phase of the production cycle, I guess, because like I would not say that our final products are like handcrafted, right? They're literally mass produced. And some of the stitching is done by hand or whatever but like that's of the signatures together and stuff like that. Mostly
Right.
that's mostly like the person isn't even stitching it by hand. They're like holding the signatures and they run it up to a machine. But it's not something that we're doing, right? It's something that we're having paid to be manufactured. But like those handcrafted things that are, I planed to this and I poured this resin or I got my toothpick in there, that is much more, that's where the value of your efforts are.
It's a tough balance too. Like, I want to be more efficient and I want to, automate some of it, but how much do I automate it? And then at what point does it become like, oh, I just push a button and it pops out a box? Like, it's hard to balance that. So, because I've got a CNC and the base is programmed in there, but the design work, but then I've got to do hand sanding and touch every one. So it's like, I haven't discovered how much automation is too much automation at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
So
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when we're in like heavy production, if you saw our house, so the CNC is in the garage, planer, all the big stuff, the lasers in an office in the house. And then every flat surface in the house, we have like 6 folding tables that come out, becomes a different stage of where boxes are. Are they, cut? Are they resins curing? Are they being sealed on one side? Because then we have to flip them and seal them on another side. Are they at the point of magnets? Are they at the point of having the velvet put in? Like it is a full like circus of boxes in the house to the point that like our 17-year-old's like, hey, I would just like a table to eat at the week before you go to Gen Con. Um, but is trying to figure out like how do we make it more efficient so one we can match the production that we need. But then there's also like for us, our biggest conversation the last year has been what is our goal for production? Like
Hmm.
where if we sell X amount that we're like satisfied with where we're at because the goal is not to build a giant empire. Like we want to pay some bills and enjoy going to conventions. Like,
Right, right.
where's that line? And so when you look at automating some of the production, like if we send it to a factory to make, I don't know, we haven't, I don't think we like that.
yeah, it's not
Right.
the greatest idea because then I'm hands off for wood selection and I can't verify sustainability. But then I'm like, well, I could use bamboo and that's super sustainable, but the best place to get that is overseas. It doesn't grow here very well. And, so there's just all these balancing, it's this big balancing act on
Sure.
whether or not we
Yeah.
have something to make them. And do they pour the resin or do we pour the resin? It's,
Yeah, because some of the big thrill for us, like in our personal lives, we're not super, super social. Like if you and I know each other, right? And we're at a park and you sit on a bench, like I will, I'm not a bad person, but I'll give you like a friendly smile. But I'm also like, let me read my book or scroll my
Uh-huh.
phone.
Uh-huh.
But when we walk into a convention, that common ground with everyone, like if
Mm,
you see it, people randomly in elevators start talking to each other, or
yeah.
there's just a whole different um vibe, I guess is the best way to put it. But when we're
Sure.
at the booth and someone picks up one of the boxes and they're like, oh my gosh, I love the finish on this, or the resin, or like we made that. And so
Hmm.
it's it's a really good like high
Yeah.
to experience. And then also when they ask questions, like we can give them those answers because we did it.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's great. I mean, you gotta, gosh, there's so many things that like, I thought fulfilling a Kickstarter is hard because we've done that where you get the tables and stuff like that. But like again, the manufacturing part of it, like at the literally you're at like cottage industry scale, right? This is your, house that fills up with, like you said, 6 tables of like the different processes. Yeah, that's yeah. You can't. How many of those boxes fit on a 30 by 6 foot table? It's like that's the limit of this stage. Um, yeah, that's.
Yeah,
But
a lot,
then,
a lot of boxes can fit on that table.
depending on the stage they're in,
That's
if
true.
they're drawing, then you've got like 10 you can put on there. Yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, it's been a learning process to figure out how to like move things through the cycle as we've upped production. I mean, I think the first two cons, you took maybe 50 boxes.
Well, my goal for the first one in 2019 was 100 boxes.
And I think we were there.
I didn't make it to 100 boxes to show up to this first con. It was Lexicon 2019, and I didn't make it to 100. But thinking about only having less than 100 boxes to go to a convention now, I'm like, no, never.
yeah.
Gotta have more.
I mean, that's. I mean, that's good though. That's like it,
It's a good problem to have.
right, right. Yeah, that's always the thing that Brendan and I say. It's like all these leveling up things are like, oh, now we've got to solve this, and oh, we've got to solve this, and it's like, but I'd rather be growing than not,
Yeah.
because that's we need to get a little bit bigger, right? To continue to do it at all. It feels like, you can't just I mean, that's not totally true. There are other people who like they make one game a year and that's all they want to do with it, right? But Brandon and I are trying to get to the point that this is our job, so we keep growing until we get to that point. Um
I love
uh
the variety at your guys' booth. Like never going home. I mean, we're big fans of weddings, so
yeah. Well, thank you. And we're gonna keep trying to do it. And you know, uh I know you have a box with a gas mask guy on it, and that's like, you know, I don't know, maybe we should do a more official version of that, like why not? Let's talk about it some other time. But why not? So I've got some other, I think we've covered a lot of the things I wanted to ask about, but like so as we kind of move toward the end here, is there anything that tell us a little about like what's up for your rest of your con schedule for this year? What any cool things that you might be doing? Like you mentioned just completing a Kickstarter, so like tell us a little bit about that. What's in the near future, and then we'll end with like and you can tell us your website and all that kind of stuff. So, but for what now? What's where can
Near
people find
future,
you on at the con scene and what do you got at your
we'll
tables?
get Gamehole Con, and it's our last one for the year.
it's in Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah, in
Yeah,
October.
in
So
October. So like
so
about
we're working on that.
6 weeks from the time of this recording.
And then yeah, so we're doing the Black Oak Kickstarter. We're working on all those towers right now. That's a big deal. And then planning, we're still in the planning phases for the mazes box. Let's see, making more Dungeon Crawl Classics layout boxes, trying to build more inventory. That's kind of the near future. Um,
We haven't set our con calendar for next year because we're looking at, so we have a two-car garage. That's the shop right now. And there's
Right.
no expanding what we have. So we're looking at the idea of moving and having like a full barn essentially. So
Yeah.
we would have a full shop. Because it is a very cottage style production right now. Like what was the sunroom is now the resin room, and there's everything has to do with Dirty Woods now. So we're looking at kind of expanding, so that will change our con schedule for next year. We know we'll be at Origins, but whether we do any other conventions next year, we may stop or take a break from conventions to rebuild the shop, and then
Hmm.
that way we can come back with a lot more inventory.
And we're with the rebranding, we're gonna take a look at the rest of the business and like actually put numbers like what does growth look like? What do our numbers look like? How do we actually want this to play out?
Yeah.
Re-strategizing everything. So
Rebranding. So tell me more about that then. What's the I mean, if you have anything that you can say, is it secret? Like
oh
you're
no,
Yeah.
it's not secret. That's just it's gonna be a slow process because
Hmm.
we're figuring out the move and figuring out what everything looks like. We are rebranding to Troll and Kobold. Uh,
Oh, like we talked about at the beginning of the interview.
yeah.
Excellent.
Um, and then so that was kind of something we talked about because Dirty Woods is kind of like me, and it
Hmm.
really hasn't been just me for a long time. It's been us. So we talked about it, and then we had some issues with getting our Facebook page getting nuked from the Facebook overlords. So it's we were just let's do it. Let's
We were going to do a
gotta
really
go.
slow roll, and then the AI made a mistake on the Facebook,
Hmm.
and yeah, it nuked the page. And then they came back and they were like, "Oh, you have no violations," but they never actually really fixed the page. So we just when the page was zapped, we are like, if we're gonna have to rebuild on social media, like
Yeah, it's like an opportunity to make that decision.
yeah. Plus, I mean, Dirty Woods, you came up with the name. So Mark's last name is Duarte. And when he was in the army, no one could actually say that. That's why I go by Patterson, because no one can ever pronounce his last name. Um, and so when was it when you were at boot camp,
Yeah,
or
it was boot camp.
they were like trying to pronounce his name? There was like, your name's Dirty. And so that's what his
Yeah.
nickname was in the service. And then started working with Woods. So that's where Dirty Woods came from.
Yeah.
So now that we're both, once I started doing the resin and just working with it more, we decided to do Troll Kobold, which is our origin story. So
Yeah. That's it's like a it's so it surprisingly sweet and charming. Actually. Like yeah,
that
it's
about
it's so well, thank you for that. So we'll be looking for that rebranding and then new website, I guess, or new website address anyway. And like what is the current place? You mentioned Etsy shop before. Do you still have an Etsy? Like what's the
We don't see anymore. It's we're at dirtywoods.net still for the at least until the end of the year until we figure out what the rest of that looks like.
yeah.
We started Facebook, so Troll and Kobold is on Facebook and Threads, and I think I'm gonna again to do
if we did Instagram or not.
gonna do Instagram. I haven't done that, so it's like I said, it's a slow transition. So
Yeah.
everywhere, there's Dirty Woods is still out there on Facebook and Instagram and Threads and stuff, but it's
It's that
not
weird
great.
transition phase that we're working through.
You're gonna commission like a caricature artist to draw each of you as a troll
Yes,
and kobold? Is that like going to be the new?
we just have to find. We're gonna talk to a couple of different artists and work with the right person and come up with. We have to solidify our vision too. But yes, you're gonna have
Sure.
little troll, little kobold, and characters and stuff.
All
So
right, all right. That's then they can like just be like the almost the mascots, right? These avatars can become the mascot of in the corners of the website and that kind of stuff, right? I mean,
Yeah,
this is it's promising rebranding. It's promising.
we're excited about it.
yeah,
Excellent. All right. Well, I think we've gotten to the end of the question list. Maybe it hasn't been quite an hour yet, but that's fine. Do you have anything else that you want to say before we say goodbye for the time? Like what's some final thought? What's some I don't know, do you have any encouraging words for the people that have gotten you through times? Like I don't know. People who
So
wanted yeah, yeah, go ahead.
often enough, I see a lot of people who like, hey, I do this thing or whatever, and I can't figure this out, or whether it's books or whether it's woodworking or CNC or whatever. And man, this is a great industry to just go for it in. Like, if you're gonna make a thing and do a thing, like send us an email, send us a message. Like if it's something that we do and you had a question about it, you know, I'll answer all questions. I'll tell you, how the process works, and I'll share all that with you aside from like, the actual files themselves. But
Sure.
uh, and I see that with a lot of other makers too. It's just like they want everybody else to succeed. So, whether my advice to anybody out there who's trying to like do this stuff is just do it and ask questions. And it's hard because most of us are introverts and stuff. And but go to a con and start asking questions. And hey, I did this thing. What do you think? Or how do I do this? Or like send us an email, ask us a question. I'll help you out. I want to see everybody succeed. So it's the greatest part about being in this industry.
Yeah, I mean, hobbyist industries in general, people are there because they're passionate about it,
Yeah,
right? Like,
for sure.
and I think where the gaming industry is a little different and in my mind better, is that there are so many flavors of games, right?
Mm,
Like, I mean, there's 5 minute take that games, there are giant war games that take hours upon hours, right? There's all the different flavors of tabletop. Like we played so we just played some Shadow Dark. Right before that, we played DCC, which is Dungeon Crawl Classics. We also had a game run for us called Goblin with a Fat Ass, which yeah, like there's so many options to the gaming industry. And I think if you are passionate about something and you have an idea, like exactly what Mark's saying, talk to people about it. I mean, the con family is so just accepting and cheerleaders for everyone else. So you see it at conventions, right? Like someone's like, "Oh, I was thinking about adding this to it," and everyone's like, "Yeah, yeah, you should do that." And then they give great feedback, and they give honest feedback too. Like there's
yeah,
times where you come up with an idea and they're like, "Hey, the mechanics on that are kind of funky. Like, here's what's going to happen when you play." And I just find it's so receptive when we're there, and I mean, we've just had, I don't know, it's just been an amazing community to grow with over the last 5, 6 years,
Here,
6 years. Um, that yeah, if you even think you want to get into it, like ask people. I just find that people are not shy about saying, yeah, here's where it was great for us. This was terrible. Don't do this. Like we made this mistake, right? Like everyone's in there for that. We
right, right.
actually had talked to someone recently, and I'm not going to put any names to the conversation, but they were talking about when it came to like looking at con layouts that publishers would not want to be near each other. And the feedback
Oh yeah,
was,
yeah,
that's not true, actually. Like most people like to play multiple types of games, and a
yeah,
publisher being by another one, unless it's like it's really, really competing on what they're at, right? But I play Chaosium's games, I play Goodman games, play Wet Ink.
yeah.
You know,
I, I,
it's not that kind of competition.
yeah, I know. There's definitely, there's definitely people will ask me for things, and I'll be like, okay, I don't have that here, but like it is down this row, 3 booths. See that sign? Yeah, right behind there. Right, go right there. That is exactly what you're looking for because, yeah, it's like there's no reason that we're not in competition, right? It's like I want to know where I am to point the people to like, oh, that's over at Imagining. Oh no, Limithron's right around the corner, right there, like 3 booths down. That's the person that see the guy with the hat. Yeah, him. Go talk to him. And
Yeah,
people come to me the same way. We're like, oh, I was just talking to that guy down there. He said, come over here to talk to you about this thing. And I'm like, uh-huh, I have that right here. And
yeah,
and yeah, absolutely. I want to second on both of what you both said about like, yeah, it's a great community to have grown up in over the last few years and the encouragement of about like almost always people are like, oh, that does sound cool, you should try that, and the encouragement is there, like So yeah, it's great. All right. Janet, Mark, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for talking to me. So, like you say, so forthrightly about your process, and it's been a learning for me, and hopefully for the other viewers of the video. And I want to thank all of the people who watched the video. What 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 would you like to see on the cover of a dice vault? Put it in the comments so Janet and Mark can find it and do their planning for the next season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see you. It will be a game hall, so we'll see you there.
Awesome.
Sweet.